Hi, my name is Nick Borson, and in this video I'm going to give a quick introduction to Win2D, which is a 2D graphics library for Microsoft. So Win2D has an immediate mode design as opposed to retain mode, and what that means is that the basic programming model for using this library is it gives you a canvas and you can use commands to draw to that canvas, but it doesn't really remember anything about the objects you've drawn. It just draws what you draw and then forgets about it. This is in contrast to a retained mode library where the programming model is that you add objects to some kind of tree and it draws them for you and it retains information about the contents of your tree, of your scene, if you will. Other features of Win2D is that it's a hardware accelerated library, so it's built on top of a couple of Windows libraries called Direct2D and DirectWrite that are hardware accelerated. They take advantage of the GPU to give you good performance. And Win2D also integrates with XAML, which is a language for building user interfaces. Okay, XAML, which rhymes with camel, stands for XML Application Markup Language. And like I said, it's a language for building user interfaces. It's a markup language, kind of like HTML that's used for web pages is a markup language. So it's not quite as general purpose as a general purpose programming language like C# or C++. But the plus side of that is it's easier to write tools. There are designer tools and so on that can build XAML for you, and rather than having to write the XAML by hand. Although I tend to prefer writing XAML by hand. So XAML, the idea is that you can construct much of your user interface, like your controls and so on, in XAML, and then you write C# code or C++ code, your choice, to handle events that are generated by those controls. So you have, part of your program logic is written in a general purpose programming language, but a lot of your UI stuff can just be built out of this markup language. There are three different flavors of XAML, or three different frameworks that all use this XAML markup language. The one is called WPF, which stands for Windows Presentation Foundation. That came out around the same time as, or at the same time as Windows Vista, and still around. Then when Windows 8 came out, a new kind of variant of XAML that was associated with a new kind of application model for Windows came out, which is called the UWP, for Universal Windows Platform, and that was further updated in Windows 10. But the one we're going to use is called WinUI3, which is part of a library called the Windows App SDK. And the nice thing about WinUI3 and the Windows App SDK is that they're not part of Windows. They do not ship as part of Windows. They ship on their own schedule. And the advantage of that is you can build a WinUI3 app taking advantage of all the latest WinUI features, and that app will still run on older versions of Windows. You're not dependent on only being able to use the features of whatever the lowest version of Windows that your customer or user is running. So in this video, I'm going to create a very simple app called Drawlines. And just to walk you through the steps we're going to take here, I'm going to first use Visual Studio to create the app from using the WinUI3 template. Then we'll add the Win2D NuGet package to the app so that we can use Win2D features. We'll add the Win2D canvas control to our app. We'll handle the draw event so we can draw some stuff to the canvas control. And then we'll process pointer events to draw lines when the user clicks or touches the canvas. And finally, I will process the create resources event, and I'll show you and I'll explain what that means. All right, let's go ahead and create our application. Here I've launched Visual Studio and I chose New Project. And now we see a list of project templates to choose from. And on the right-hand side are some recent ones I've used. The one I want to use here is blank app packaged WinUI3. So if I typed WinUI3 in the search box here, WinUI3, it would filter the list, and that's the first one that comes up. So I'm going to go ahead and click Next. I'm going to set the name of the app that I'm going to create, which I'm going to call Drawlines, and click Create. And now Visual Studio is going to chug away for a minute and go ahead and create my app. All right, so here we have our Drawlines application, and you see that it has various stuff in the Solution Explorer. It has a XAML file that has like properties of the app as a whole. It has another XAML file that has the main window contents. And then underneath, sort of nested under that main window.xaml file, there's a main window.xaml.cs file, which contains the code behind C# code associated with that XAML. So the XAML markup creates controls and stuff, and that sets their properties. We'll take a look at that here. The XAML markup, it creates a window object, and then within the window object is a stack panel object, and within the stack panel object is a button object. And then you notice that, for example, the stack panel, the button object has a click attribute. So this is going to invoke a function which is in main-window.xaml.cs called myButtonClick. So that's how the XAML and the C# code kind of work together. You can build up your controls, and you can set events on those controls and other properties. And then you can also then handle events by writing C# code. All right, I want to use Win2D in this application. So the next step I have to do is to add the Win2D library to my project as a NuGet package. So if I right-click on the name of the project, I click on draw lines here. Oops, I was supposed to be right-clicking. There's a menu item called Manage NuGet Packages. I'm going to click on that. And here it has the packages that are installed, which is some Windows SDK stuff. But then I can click Browse. And then I can search for Win2D. And it's now searching this NuGet.org, which is NuGet basically is a system for being able to deliver code libraries over the internet. NuGet.org is a repository for shared libraries that people can publish to and read from. So Win2D has a couple of versions. There's Win2D.uwp. So if I were creating a UWP app, I would use that version of Win2D. And then there's Microsoft.graphics.win2d, which is for WinUI. So that's the one we want. So I'm going to go ahead and click Install here. And it's asking me if I can make changes to the solution. I say go ahead. And it's asking me to accept the license agreement for this, which I'm going to go ahead and do. And now Win2D has been installed to my, is now available because it's been added to my project. So if we see, for example, I think if I see, if I click expand the dependencies, packages, we can see that Win2D now shows up in the list of packages that my project is referencing. All right, so we've added a reference to Win2D to the app. Let's go ahead and actually use Win2D. To do that, I want to add a canvas control to my main window. So I'm going to get rid of the. So okay, well, first of all, in order to be able to reference the canvas control, we need to be able to reference the name of the namespace that contains that code. Now you notice that one of the attributes here is, so XML has this concept of namespaces. So here we've given the name local. We've defined this local prefix we've associated with using :drawlines. So that means that code in the drawlines namespace, which is the namespace that this application's code lives in, can be referenced using local : as a prefix. The XAML, or rather the Win2D XAML controls live in a namespace called Microsoft.UI.graphic. Okay, let's put it in XMLNS canvas. I'll call it Microsoft, or using. Using means that this is namespace is associated with it's like a using directive in C#. It's associated with a .NET namespace, Microsoft.graphics canvas .xaml, I think it is. XAML. There it is. That's where the canvas controls live. Okay, so having done that, now I can add a canvas control by I'm going to get rid of the. All right, let's go back to our XAML. And now in addition to the draw event, let's handle a couple more events here. We're going to handle the pointer pressed event, and I'll get a tab to add a new event handler. And we'll handle the pointer moved event. And again, I hit tab to add an event handler for that. And then pointer released event. And we'll hit tab to handle that. So the idea here is that when I press the mouse pointer, or I think I can use my finger or pen, whatever, any of these would be qualified as, that's what the word pointer is, kind of generic to the particular input device. When I press the, click the mouse down, then I can start drawing. I'll get that pointer pressed event. As I move the mouse around, I'll get the pointer moved event, and then when I release it, I'll get the pointer released event. And that'll give me an opportunity to draw stuff. So let's go ahead and look at my event handlers here. So here I have my pointer pressed event, and we have pointer routed event args is an argument that's passed in. So let's take a look at that. We have e dot pointer, I think, is one of the e dot get current point, I think, is actually the method that allows me to get the coordinate of the point that this argument that this event is associated with. And it's giving me a UI element. It's asking me to pass in a UI element, which could be a control or something, that the coordinate is relative to, because I want coordinates that are relative to the control that I'm drawing in this case, the canvas. So to do that, let's go ahead and pass in our canvas control. And I want to be able to refer to the control by name, so I give it an attribute called x:name, and I'll just call it mCanvas. All right. So we have the name mCanvas now is the name that I can use in my code. This is really just adding a member variable to my main window class. Now I can say get current point mCanvas. Okay. So it's getting a point relative to mCanvas. All right. So what is that? So if I hover over that, it's a PT is a pointer point, and that actually has a it has a bunch of properties. It's not just the you can see it has things like is in contact, pointer device type, and so on. I really just want the position here. So if I get the position property, and now PT is a point, so it has an x and a y coordinate. Now to draw a line in Win2D, it uses a type called vector2 to represent points. So I want to convert that to a vector2. So we'll I'll call this position, and then I'll say var point pt equals new vector2 position.x, position.y. Okay, and now it's giving me squiggles because the position, the point class or struct, whichever it is, the point type uses doubles for positions, but the vector2 class used in Win2D uses floats. So I have to do a cast. The difference between double and float is that double is just a 64-bit value, as float is a 32-bit value. Okay, so I have to convert these. Okay, now I have a point. So what do I do with it? Well, basically, when I press the pointer, I'm going to start drawing, and initially the line is just going to be from that point to the same point. There's going to be kind of a start point and end point for the line, the start point and end point are both going to be initially the same place when I first press the mouse pointer, but then when I move it, the end point is going to move as I move my pointer around. So we have to retain this information, so we'll just add some member variables. First of all, I want to know if I'm drawing, so I'm going to have a bool m is drawing, which is initially false. So this is like whether I am currently in the process of drawing a line. And then I'll have a vector2 m.0 and the vector 2 m.1. So these are the 2 points of my line. I'm just going to refer to them as 0.0 and 0.1. So 0.0, I'm going to set, so here when I get a pointer pressed event, I'm going to set m.0 to this point, m.1 to the same point, and then m is drawing to true. Okay? And then finally, I'm going to tell the canvas to invalidate. Okay? And what that means is I'm telling the canvas, hey, something has happened, something has changed, so you need to redraw yourself. And it'll redraw itself by calling my draw method. Okay, so we've got our pointer pressed method. Let's try our pointer move method. So we can basically do the same code again to get the position and then the point. Let's go ahead and just do that. In fact, here we could probably just simplify this a little bit. Let's go ahead and in fact, I'm going to copy that whole thing for pointer moved. So we get the position again, and then we're going to set 0.1 to be the new point. Leave 0.0 the same. We don't need to change this drawing. And in fact, we don't want to do anything if we're not drawing. So if m is drawing. So only if we're in the process of drawing do we actually do anything with a pointer moved event. Right? So when you click the mouse, you start this process of drawing. When you release the mouse, you're no longer drawing, and then you don't want to be doing this stuff. So as I'm moving the mouse, after I click the mouse, I'm in the drawing state. While I'm in that drawing state, then I process the mouse moved events or the pointer moved events by changing 0.1 to the new position and then invalidating the canvas. And then finally for the mouse released event, I'm just going to say if I'm drawing, then I'm going to say, for now, let's just say m is drawing equals false and invalidate again. Okay, so far it's just going to have we just have one line at any given time. And now we need to modify our draw method. Where is our draw method? Did I lose the draw method? There it is. Let's go ahead and draw something. So if I'm drawing, then args.drawingSession.drawLine, and we'll draw from 0.0 to 0.1, and we'll give it a color. So I think I can just, and we can also give it a, oops, there's different overloads of this method that take different things. There's one that takes a thickness, I think. First of all, let's do the color. Windows.ui.color from the RGB, and I'll make it white, so 255, 255, 255. So the red, green, and blue values are all maximum. This is going to draw a line that is 1 pixel thick. And when I say pixel in the context of XAML, I really mean it's a resolution independent API, kind of high. So a pixel really just means 1/96th of an inch. If you have a high resolution display and the DPI scaling is greater than 1, a pixel is actually more than 1 device pixel. Okay, anyway, so but let's give it a thickness. We'll make it 2 pixels thick. I think that's right. Oops, maybe that's wrong. Let's see now. Let's get the IntelliSense here. So draw a line. Okay, so 0.0, 0.1. Stroke width comes after the brush or after the color. So stroke width is we'll make the stroke a little thicker. Okay, I'll put a comment in there just so we know what that is. Stroke width. So go ahead and run this. And I'll just hit the run without debugging. Okay, and then when I click, it puts me in the drawing mode, and now as I move the mouse, every time I move the mouse around, I'm getting the pointer moved event, and I'm setting the 0.2 coordinate, and then triggering drawing again. And each time it just draws from 0.0 to 0.2. Then when I release the mouse, I'm no longer in drawing mode, so when it redraws after that, it doesn't draw anything. I mean, there's no line being drawn because M is drawing as false. Okay, so there's drawing a single line. What if I want to actually, each time I draw a line, I want to remember all the lines I've drawn so far? Well, I can just keep track of that myself. Remember, this is an immediate mode API, so it's not remembering the lines for me. I need to remember them myself. So I'm going to add a class. I'll call it a record struct line 0. Okay, this is just this record. Record is a very convenient way in the modern C# to define. In this case, define a type that has, here I can just in one line define a type that has two properties, one called 0.0 and one called 0.1, and it automatically creates a constructor for me that I can use to instantiate this object. These are both read-only properties, so they can only be initialized and never read from, and so on. And this is a struct, which means that it is stored in line rather than stored on the heap, as opposed to a class. So now, so I have, this is the point that I'm currently drawing. So being drawn, if any. And then I'll have another member variable, which I'll make it a list of line. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is every time I finish drawing, I'm going to add the current line to our list of lines, and then we have to modify our drawing code, our draw method, to draw all those lines as well as the new one. So here we can say for each var line in m lines. Okay, and we just basically do the same code here. But instead of drawing m.0, we're going to draw a line.0. And instead of drawing m.1, we're going to draw a line.1. And I'm going to make the stroke width a little thinner for the lines that we've already drawn. So the drawing we're currently drawing is going to be a little thicker than the lines we already drew. So there's our modified drawing code. So draw all the lines. Okay. And then we have to handle the pointer release method by saying mlines.add new line 0.0.1. Okay. Oops, sorry. This is m.0 and m.1. Okay, so we add the current line to the saved lines. Okay, let's go ahead and build and run this. All right, now I click, and again, I'm getting the pointer down event, pointer pressed event when I first click. I get the pointer move event every time I move the mouse. When I get the pointer released event, then I add the line to the m lines that I'm no longer drawing, but I add the line I just drew to my m lines list. And then the draw method, when it's prompted to draw, it draws the line from that list. And of course, it draws that a little thinner than before because we chose to draw our saved lines with only a 1 pixel, at 1 pixel thick rather than 2 pixels thick. So if I keep drawing more lines, we see that we get more and more of them added to that list. And now we have like the world's simplest drawing app. Okay, so that is obviously Win2D can do a whole lot more than just drawing lines, but this gives you just the very basics of how to get Win2D up and running. Last thing I want to share with you before wrapping up here is the concept of creating resources in Win2D. So like I said, Win2D is a hardware accelerated API, which means that you can create a lot of objects that are actually that encapsulate resources that are created that are tied to a graphics device that are stored in video memory and use GPU resources. And one thing about those resources is that if the GPU device for some reason gets reset, which can happen in certain scenarios, then those resources need to be recreated. So in order to make that, so the model that the Win2D follows is that the creation of device-dependent resources should be done in response to the create resources event handler. So part of the reason is that the resources are tied to a particular device, and part of the reason is that then you can be prompted to create with the resources whenever they need to be created. So here I've already done that just to save time. I've added the create resources event to the canvas control in this XAML here, and that event is fires my event handler. If we switch over to the .cs file here, here I have my create resources event handler, and what I'm doing is I simply create a canvas solid color brush. Now the first parameter is a because any of these resources are going to be tied to a particular device, the first parameter for the constructor of things like this is a resource creator. So in this case, the canvas itself implements the iCanvas resource creator interface, so I can pass that as the first parameter. And then for a solid color brush, the second parameter is simply the color. But you can have other more complicated things like radial gradient brush or linear gradient brush or what have you that would take additional parameters. So I store that in the member variable, which I'm calling white brush. So here I have a canvas solid color brush member. So basically, any other device-dependent resources I would want to create, whether it's loading a bitmap or what have you, I would store as member variables and initialize those from my create resources event handler. And then when I draw, instead of specifying color, I can actually now use the white brush that I created in that event handler. So, and again, if I were drawing something else that relied on other resources, I could do that there. And of course, if I run my app, I'll see that it behaves exactly the same as it did before, but now it is using the brush that I created instead of just specifying the color on each draw lines call. All right, so in summary, we've learned now how to create a very simple Win2D app, or really it's a WinUI3 app that uses Win2D. And to recap what we did, we created a WinUI3 app from the template in Visual Studio. We added a Win2D, the Win2D NuGet package for WinUI3. Then we added a canvas control to our XAML. And we added a draw event handler that draws a bunch of lines. We added event handlers for the pointer down, pointer moved, and pointer up, or pointer pressed, pointer moved, and pointer release events to update our state by adding, changing coordinates and adding lines to our list, and then in each case we invalidate the canvas to prompt our draw method to be called again to redraw the whole scene. And then finally, I showed the create resources event, which is a place where you would do any resource creation of objects of canvas objects that depend on hardware resources. So there's a whole lot more you can do with Win2D. Of course, this is just meant to be a quick getting started to show how to get up and running. But I hope that kind of maybe inspires you to get started with any of your own projects you might want to do that involve 2D graphics. Thanks for watching. Bye.